Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Immortal Hulk, issue number 35. Boom! Actually, that's actually something that happens in the comic book, the boom thing. Let's get talk about who made this comic book. We'll talk a little bit about the comic book itself and how boom, 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 we start placing things and seeing a pattern here. Okay, so this issue is called A Certain Amount of Light. That doesn't necessarily spoil anything in this book. Al Ewing is the writer, Mike Hawthorne is the guest penciler, and there's a guest inker also, Mark Morales. Paul Mounts is the typical colorist, and VC's Corey Petit on letters. Alex Ross doing the cover, and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the Immortal Hulk. Well, the Incredible Hulk. Created the Hulk, all right? So check this out. We're going to start off with the exposition in the beginning. Literally, the important Hulks that Ewing wants you to know, he lets you know exactly who they are. Also, the leader. It's important to remember that the leader is here, because we've been seeing that. So we start off with a bunch of conversations with people who are just like, yeah, the Hulk's a really good guy. I really like the Hulk all over the world. You know, look what Hulk did with Roxxon. Hey, Roxxon's under investigation now because of what the Hulk has exposed. And that Zemu, man, he acted like he was the Hulk. He's not the Hulk. He's evil, man. He's big, white, furball, snowy-looking evil thing, you know? Like, she's like the Wampa. She's like the Wampa. Somebody needs to cut his arm off with a lightsaber. Anyway, dude's evil. We're better off because of the Hulk. Also, this place called Georgeville, Iowa, invites the Hulk to come over and hang out with them, do some photo ops. You might remember these guys. Yeah, these are the guys who, in issue 7, we get pointed out. We saw them in Immortal Hulk issue number 1, because that's where the Hulk was actually walking around, right? And then by issue 7, that's when the Avengers showed up and they wanted blowing stuff up. And it really wasn't the Hulk's fault, I'm saying. But Georgeville also showed up at least one other place. And I don't know if it was a first appearance or not. I don't really care. But you guys remember the Weapon H books? It's like 3 books or so of that. And it was Hulk and Wolverine versus the Hulkverine. Yeah. And there were only 3 issues of that. And you know who was actually the main bad guy in this, right? It's actually the leader. And I didn't really like the leader's appearance in there. It just wasn't great. But we are starting to piece together what Ewing is doing. Ewing, man, is great that whether you like what he's taking reference from or not, and we don't even know if he likes what he's taking reference or not, he's keeping continuity better than, in my opinion, anybody in the comic books right now. He sees when's the last appearance of this guy, when's the last several appearances. Let's check this out. Look up the character, make sure I really know the character well, unless he's just memorized all these books. He says, all right, now let's continue that story. He makes sure that we understand. He's paying attention to all that continuity, and he's going to keep it in mind for us, the reader. I'm telling you, every time somebody tries to say something bad about Ewing, suddenly we find out something else good about him. So there's that. In a world where all these writers are like, but continuity's hard. Yeah, so's math. And you know what? You're more successful if you know it. So, boom. So anyway, the Devil Hulk is tied up. Hulk is trying to rescue him because he's realizing from the exposition at the beginning of the book that, hey, it turns out Devil Hulk is actually a good guy and he's always trying to help me out. The problem is that there's these huge chains on the Devil Hulk, holding him in. Dude can't even hardly breathe, for crying out loud. Anyway, every time that Banner looks away, it's like the chains are being reinforced. What is doing that? I don't know. Could it be that Banner realized this is somebody who helps him and he doesn't really want the help? He just thinks he does? I don't know. Banner's a very complicated individual. It's important to remember as we go on with this comic book. So Savage Hulk comes walking up and he's like, Hulk is hulking. Yeah, we know, bud. But even though he keeps on saying Hulk over and over again, the idea is that he says it for a reason, because he knows his identity really well. Really cool comment in the letters column at the end of this comic book. I really dug that. Read them, you'll know who I'm talking about. Anyway, So I dig the idea that Hulk and Banner are actually trying to hash things out. Savage Hulk is the oldest of the Hulks, essentially. You know, the longest running, at the very least, I should say. Maybe that first issue is a little bit different, but you get the gist, right? So when we see later on that Hulk, knowing who he is, recognizes that Banner doesn't know who he is. And he points out, you're always trying to, make us disappear or hurt us or even kill us sometimes, getting Hawkeye to attack us, just this big purple arrow shooting guy. Anyway, I really dig that. Because Banner's having a hard time reconciling everything around him and inside of him also. Dissociative identity disorder, it's probably a heck of a thing. I can only imagine, right? So, almost reminds me of what's happening on the Doom Patrol, right? Anyway, so we're seeing that he's trying to reconcile himself. Because when you think about it, a psychologist, anybody, whatever, will tell you none of these other people are necessarily real. They're just versions of yourself. They're all just you. But what if they weren't? What if because of the gamma radiation, the gamma energy, that they're actually not different versions of him? They're actually different people. What if? I mean, they do come out looking very different, a whole lot stronger, like humans shouldn't be able to do. But, there's that. He's also having a hard time coping with the things around him and the people around him, including Betty. Betty puts out a little cry for help. He's having a hard time talking with her because, well, she's still in her harpy form. So much that's happening in this book, and so much I'm loving it. I'm loving this psychological profile. If I did have to complain about one thing, it's that they kept going back, and it was kind of funny. I'm sure it was meant to be funny, but they kept on pointing out, don't worry about the Hulk, because Hulk is in Georgeville, Iowa, where he inadvertently blew some stuff up. Anyhow, don't worry, because Rick is there with him. Rick will keep him safe. And this is mentioned over and over. If it was only mentioned once, it would have been perfect. But it's mentioned multiple times. The beginning of this comic book tells you almost exactly what's going to happen. And yeah, I was still surprised to see it. Having the guest artists every so often is a good thing. It's probably not a good thing for Joe Bennett because, he kind of wants to get paid for this stuff, right? But all that being said, having the guest writer, for me at least, as the reader, is sometimes a good thing. We needed a different, artist, somebody who's just going to do something very different from what Joe Bennett is doing, and that's Mike Hawthorne in this. Hawthorne did an amazing thing. He made Hulk smile. He also made Hulk kind of look down at Banner. And just these two panels alone were really impressive. All the art in here is great. Seeing him pull that off, it was cool. I don't know if Bennett can make Hulk smile. Probably. He's Joe Bennett, for crying out loud. But it was interesting seeing a different version of this. Again, while I would like to see everybody getting paid for, what they're doing and keep a steady job, I do have to acknowledge, having different artists on this book at certain times, it's kind of cool. And it works. It works really well. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. I am, of course, highly recommending this book. Definitely consider checking this out. I just don't see how you could possibly go wrong. All that being said, bang, boom, to the moon. Can't wait to see what happens next because, the leader's an evil son of a gun. Anyway, guys, I am out. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.